Welcome back, everybody. Episode 10, Mariners Deep Dive Podcast. We're here as always. Luke Westfall, the host, Jacob Westfall, the co-host, rocking out in his college apartment right now. And we are only a few days away from opening day. We have some news on that, could potentially be postponed for snow and whatnot over there in Minneapolis. But opening day's on Thursday. We're recording here on a Monday at 11:26 a.m. start time for this, whenever you are getting to this. So basically, we got a full loaded episode here for you today. Plenty of MLB news, Mariners news, and things to talk about there. And then also our big topic for the day, that is the reason for this episode at this time, is we will be doing our MLB predictions today. So everything from division standings to playoffs to World Series predictions, awards, sleepers, and all that good stuff. And then on Wednesday, which is the day in between spring training and the opener for the Mariners, we will be doing an episode on our Mariners season predictions. So make sure you tune in on Wednesday for that. But without further ado, we'll get right into the news today. We got some MLB news to cover real quick first. So the first news is some top prospects are breaking into the MLB. We'll talk about the Mariners top prospect, who I'm sure you all want to hear about, but Bobby Witt Jr., who, depending on which list you look at, MLB.com or MLB Pipeline, all kinds of different, there's all kinds of different ones for these top prospects, top 100 lists and whatnot. But the main ones will have Witt and the next guy and Julio and Adley Rutschman kind of in mismatch 1 through 4 order. So Bobby Witt of the Royals is making his MLB debut. Spencer Torkelson, the former number 1 overall pick in 2020. Witt was the number 2 pick in 2019. Adley Rutschman was the number 1 pick in 2019, but he's currently injured. Once he's healthy, can only assume that he'll be debuting with the Orioles. And then also Hunter Greene, the flamethrower throwing starter for the Reds, who pretty much throws a consistent 103 as a starting pitcher, which is insane. So we'll see how long his arm lasts. And then there's Oneil Cruz too, who we'll talk about later with the Pirates, but he is not in the MLB yet. The Pirates with some typical, what's it called? Oh man. Anyways, service time manipulation to, if they keep him in the minor leagues for a couple of weeks, then they have another year of team control. Also, Riley Green of the Tigers is expected to be in the MLB, but he fouled the ball off his foot and broke his foot, so we won't see him for a couple months. And then Cade Cavalli, the star catcher with the Nationals, is another guy that could come up, but they did trade for Keibert Ruiz, who's another top prospect catcher with the Dodgers last year in the Scherzer Turner trade. So we'll see when Cavalli might make his MLB debut. A piece of MLB news rules here. Umpires now, when they are going to review or when they are, doing replays and all that kind of stuff, guy, whether he was safe or not at first or slid into second and the tag wasn't on, or say like they call off a home run because he missed the bag running around second, like they have to come out with a microphone now and announce that to the crowd like in the NFL. So it's going to make things a lot more transparent for announcers, a lot more transparent for fans in the stadium, watching on TV, and you're actually going to know what is happening rather than just relying on the interpretation of the announcers and the rules analysts in the studio. So you're actually going to know what's going on, which is really nice. Also, a new MLB rule being tested in the minor leagues is second base being significantly closer, around 14-ish inches closer to home plate, first and third, to try and encourage stealing and extending singles into doubles and doubles into triples and whatnot. So we'll see if that works. Jacob deGrom shut down for 4 weeks with a shoulder injury, so another tough loss for the star pitcher deGrom, and as well as Scherzer having hamstring tightness on the Mets. So we could be witnessing the great crumble of the Mets we get every year before the season even starts. Also for the White Sox, Lance Lynn is down for 4 weeks with a knee tear, and Garrett Crochet is having Tommy John surgery. So the Mariners face them in the second series of the season. So that could be potentially big. Wade LeBlanc is retiring from baseball. He pitched for the Mariners for a while there. the soft throwing lefty who was all right, kind of played on some of the 20 plus years of irrelevant Mariners teams, but still, congratulations to him on a long career. And then, of course, we got some breaking news here. I mean, not breaking, but it's newer news today. Jose Godoy, who the Mariners had DFA'd, he made his MLB debut a season ago with the Mariners. He ended up going to the Giants, and then they cut him. And then he went to the Twins, and now they cut him. And the Mariners, who just cut Chance Sisco, which we'll talk about in a second, while the Twins then signed Chance Sisco. So catcher swap going on here. And I'm not sure if Jose Godoy is ever going to find a team again. The dude might just end up back on the Mariners, because the reason that he was cut anyways is because he didn't clear waivers. We tried to take him off the 40-man roster so that he could play in the minor leagues, but then he was claimed by another team. And when he's claimed, he then sticks on the 40-man roster for that team that claims him. So the reason teams are cutting him is because they don't want him on their 40-man roster. So he could easily find his way onto a team as a minor leaguer without the 40-man roster designation, but we'll have to see what happens there. So that's basically the MLB news. Nothing huge to talk about there, but Jake, I did want to get your insight or your opinion on the new umpire rule and the potential of the bases being closer and maybe those top prospects.
Well, the umpire rule with the microphone, I think that's really nice because, I'm tired of watching Joe West scream. Well, Joe West retired, but guys like Joe West and Angel Hernandez screaming about how their calls are right and stuff to the managers. I kind of want to hear what he has to say myself, kind of explain why he's they're so not smart. But I think it'll help baseball fans know what's going on more. It'll help fans kind of keep track of what they're watching, rather than being like, hey, why is this guy here? Why is this guy not out? What's going on? This is dumb. So yeah. I wish they would mic up the umpire and manager altercations. I want to hear them yelling at each other. But
yeah,
as for the second base rule, I have no opinion on it. I mean, will it encourage steals and hits or doubles? Maybe. Is that better for the game? Probably not. I mean, maybe encouraging steals is better, but encouraging more doubles, like why do you have to do that? You're just going to increase run support, and you're already making it harder for pitchers. So why are you going to continue to make it harder for pitchers?
For sure. So a few more notes on the MLB here, the wide range of the MLB, not the Mariners, some transactions. So the Orioles trade Cole Sulser and Tanner Scott, a couple of decent relievers, a couple of the better relievers on the Orioles, if there is such a thing, to the Marlins, who need some bullpen help. They send a couple of minor leaguers, a player to be named later, and a competitive balanced round B draft pick, which is pretty much essentially a 4th round draft pick. Essentially, it is a 2.5 round pick, kind of, or maybe 3. I don't know. Basically, it goes 1st round, then compensatory A, and 2nd round compensatory B. So we'll see where it is in that range. White Sox do a catcher swap of their own with the Blue Jays. Zach Collins from the White Sox in exchange for Reese McGuire of the Blue Jays. The Mets get send Miguel Castro to the Yankees for Joely Rodriguez, who's a former Ranger. The Cleveland Guardians extend Emmanuel Clase to a 5-year, $20 million deal. He was very good last year as the closer, flame-throwing right-hander who has some walk issues but is still very young. So good that they can lock him up for so cheap. The big move, the White Sox trade Craig Kimbrell to the Dodgers for AJ Pollock. Kimbrell had a north of 5 ERA once he got traded to the White Sox from the Cubs last year. Some people are saying, it's because he was a setup guy, not a closer. But if you're a good reliever, you got to be a good reliever. And he wasn't. Also, the years prior to last year being a good closer with the Cubs, he had not been good since returning from his prominence with the Red Sox. So we'll see what happens on the Dodgers. And AJ Pollock was once a top 3 MVP candidate, is still very good against left-handed pitching and sufficient against left-handed pitching. Top 80% or in sprint speed, good stuff there, and decent defensive player. So potentially a good third outfielder with Luis Robert and Eloy Jimenez for the White Sox, but they lose a couple of relievers. So we won't see Craig Kimbrell in the second series of the year, but we will see AJ Pollock. The Twins signed Chris Archer to a 1-year, $3.5 million deal. Mariners most likely will not see him in the first series of the season because he probably will not be a top 3 starter. Dodgers trade Matt Beatty, the utility lefty, to the Padres for minor leaguer River Ryan, and the Dodgers extend Dave Roberts, their manager, who famously said just over a week ago that he guarantees they will win the World Series, to a 3-year contract extension. So, Jake, you see these moves, a few of them closer to home than others, but anything that stands out to you?
Craig Kimbrell stands out. He goes to the Dodgers. He's now their closer. They lose Kenley Jansen. They go from one overrated closer to another. Kimbrell really only had, a solid stretch last year. I'm trying to find his ERA. That's why I can't find it. Not looking at it. He had, 0.049 in 39 games and 36.2 innings with the Cubs. And then he came out and he had his +5 ERA in 23 innings with the White Sox. And then, in years prior, he had a 5.28 and a 6.53 ERA. So I don't think he's got it in him anymore. I think the Kimbrell days of being elite are over. I would not be surprised to see him kind of struggle with the Dodgers. Who would their left fielder be now that the Dodgers have gotten rid of Pollock?
Well, they're going to have Cody Bellinger in center. So their other outfielders are going to be, Mookie Betts in right field. So their left field options are probably Chris Taylor as an everyday guy, Gavin Lux, if they want to have him play outfield. Pretty much not an actual outfielder.
It's pretty much Chris Taylor. So, I guess it works. But
except you kind of lose your utility player when you put Chris Taylor in left field, because Gavin Lux, I don't know why everyone is still so high on Gavin Lux. I guess it's just because he's a Dodger, but this dude's been a top prospect that's making his rise or rising up with the Dodgers for the last 3 seasons. And I haven't seen anything from him to say that he's actually good other than a hit now and then. So, and not to mention Cody Bellinger was absolutely atrocious last season. So, and he's been terrible in spring training too. Yeah. So, it'll be interesting to see. That I'm not saying this will be crippling for the Dodgers, but if Kimbrell is not good, they could put Treinen as their closer, but their bullpen could be worse if he's not good. And then they lose AJ Pollock, who's actually a really valuable bat in that lineup, more so than a lot of people believe. So I think that is it's definitely some big news. A couple of guys that you might not think are huge front headline news, but it actually is a pretty substantial trade between 2 pretty solid teams. But let's get to some moves within our division. So the Rangers traded Jose Trevino to the Yankees for a couple of minor leaguers. Trevino is more of a defensive catcher, which is what the Yankees wanted. He'll probably split time there with Higashioka. And then the Rangers, who now have Mitch Garver, don't need Trevino anymore, so they get a couple of young guys in their system. The Los Angeles Angels have DFA'd Justin Upton to try and clear space in their outfield to give more playing time to Brandon Marsh and to
Joe
Joe Adell.
Adell.
So a couple of young guys, young outfielders that they want to see if they can perform. They have been playing well in spring training, so we'll see what happens there. However, the Angels take on $28 million in dead cap space. They're already taking on over $30 million from our Pujols last year. And they obviously have the giant contracts with Rendon and Trout. And if they get old and don't work out, I mean, Angels keep spending money and it does not work out. So, I mean, good to see if you're a Mariners fan, though. And then the Oakland A's make another huge move and trade Sean Manaea to the San Diego Padres. They also trade Aaron Holiday, a 13th round pick in last year's draft, to the Padres for Uriel Angeles and Adrian Martinez. So a couple of minor league guys that were I believe the 12th and 23rd or 25th prospects in the Padres system at the time. So they get a couple of decent minor league guys for Sean Manaea, and the Padres get a lot more depth in that pitching rotation. And the Athletics team continues to get less scary as they have now one less guy that will probably carve up the Mariners, because he usually does carve up the Mariners. And the only guy they have left now is Frankie Montas and Cole Irvin, but the Mariners rake off Cole Irvin, so really Frankie Montas. But they raked off Montas in the spring training game. So basically, the Mariners are just, going to win every single game against the Athletics this year. So chalk them up right now. Jake, you see these big moves. Upton, Manaea, Trevino,
So
which ones stand out to you?
getting rid of Upton kind of lowers the floor for the Angels, but it raises the ceiling with what Marsh and Adell could be. It's not what I think they will be. I don't think they'll be that good this year. But I think, you kind of know what you're going to get with Upton, and it's not good enough for what they want. And so they're kind of moving into, this is not their win now year. This is their prepare for next year, push for a wild card spot, As for, the A's losing Sean Manaea, I mean, it helps the Mariners. But as for if you're a Padres fan, I don't think you're too excited by Sean Manaea. He's not that good. He's only pitched, I guess he's pitched 4 full seasons, and he's never had an ERA under 3.59 when he's been healthy. So, he was okay last year. He was good. He had 2 complete game shutouts, but he's, if you pay attention to advanced stats, ERA plus, it tells you how good of a player you are. 100 is average, right? He had a 104 ERA plus, and he's never been higher than a 116. So he's barely above average according to the advanced stats, and by the counting stats, he doesn't look that good either. So,
right. Yeah, he wasn't great in 2020, and then 2021 last year he had another advanced stat is that FIP stat, fielding independent pitching. He was actually pretty decent there with 3.66, but too many walks per game, over 2, and then walks per 9, and then over a home run per 9 hits per 9.
He did have 194 strikeouts, which is nice.
He's a pretty good strikeout lefty guy. And for the Padres, I think it's a good move because they don't give up too much in what is still a pretty good farm system. And he's only 30 years old, so he's not too old. 6'5", 245. You like the build, and maybe you can get more out of him in a more competitive team there, but we'll see. I think that it is a good move, though, in the sense that they have a lot of uncertainty. Like, will Snow be great or will he be terrible? Will Darvish be great or will he be terrible? Will Mike Clevenger actually be healthy and be ready to pitch this year? And then you got a bunch of other uncertainty with your other pitchers too. So I think getting a solid, pretty consistent left-handed strikeout guy in your rotation that with your potential offense gives you a chance in games, with your bullpen gives you a chance in games, I think is big for them because pitching depth is going to be big. And hey, I mean, if they make the playoffs, maybe Manaea with his strikeout ability, being a power left-hander, could potentially turn into a bullpen guy, long relief guy, situational dude, or maybe he makes a start for you. But I think it's a pretty solid move considering that they didn't really give up too much. But I don't think it necessarily means like, oh, Padres World Series, right? Because we thought maybe that with the Snell and Darvish moves and those didn't work out. So we'll have to actually let this one play out before we can make any true before we can actually say anything about how that move turned out. So with that, we'll take a look now at some Mariners transactions before we get into some Mariners news here. So we mentioned that they cut Chance Sisco. They cut Ryan Buckner, who we mentioned it was either the last episode or the before that they had signed Ryan Buckner, so he's gone. Nick Margevicius goes to AAA, so clearing some more space in that rotation and in that bullpen. They signed Mike Machma to a minor league deal. He was a undrafted free agent signing last year. And then they also signed John Creel, who was an undrafted free agent signing this year. So this is his first team in the MLB. So Mike Machma, John Creel, a couple of minor league right-handers. Also signed minor league contract Tommy Malone, who's a veteran of the MLB. He's never really been great. Really, his prime years were in the early 2000s with the mid-4 ERAs, but hasn't been much since, so more pitching depth. And then they also sent Mike Ford to the minor league camp and Donovan Walton to AAA, so a couple of more position players being sent down, starting to shape out this roster. And then, of course, the Mariners also signed a one-year contract with Mitch Haniger, or Mitch Haniger signed a one-year contract with the Mariners, $7.75 million for next year. They avoid arbitration with this contract. They still need to do contracts with Adam Frazier for arbitration and also Jesse Winker. So we'll see if they get contracts done or if that's arbitration or what goes on there. But they will both be on the team. Don't worry. But Mike Haniger, they avoid arbitration with a 1 year, $7.75 million contract. And one thing that we've been talking about, we were even talking about before we started recording, was the potential of Mitch Haniger. He signed this 1 year deal, but being with the team past this year, you look at what we'll talk about with Julio Rodriguez coming up, Kelenic, Kyle Lewis could be coming back eventually, Jesse Winker, you got, other guy, I don't remember, but a lot of outfielders out there for the Mariners right now. Taylor Trammell in the minor leagues, it's not really a threat right now, but he's there. Alberto Rodriguez is coming up, he's there. A lot of these guys, so I don't know necessarily if Haniger is going to still be with the team. So Jake, you see these news, you can mention any of the other ones that you think stand out to you, but just kind of your insight on the whole Haniger situation here.
Well, here's the thing. We might want to move on, but I don't think Haniger will get paid a ton. And I think we'll have enough money. Well, I mean, you'll always have enough money in the MLB, but I think he'd be worth giving a contract, like maybe 3 years, like $10 million a year. I'm sure that would be good enough for him, especially if he can do something similar to last year. I mean, he had 38 home runs.
Fifth in the MLB too in home runs.
Exactly. He was getting the home runs. He was getting the hits. He was getting the walks. He was getting the RBIs. I mean, not as much as Seager, of course, but he was our best player, obviously, and he's kind of the cornerstone of this team, right? He's the veteran guy who's leading the outfield. He's solid in the field. He's good with the bat. I think walking or letting him go and moving on would be a mistake because you don't even know if Kyle Lewis can be healthy for more than a week at a time right now. And, Kelenic, Rodriguez, they're, still trying to show what they are. Jesse Winker, we'll see exactly how long he's around, but he's not really built to be a right fielder. As for other guys, I can't really think of any other guys that would really challenge Haniger for that spot. Taylor Trammell, I don't think so. I just think that he's kind of a cornerstone of that outfield, and that he's a top 50 player, maybe higher in the MLB. I think, He's like a top 5 right fielder in the entire MLB. So it would be really nice to keep him, especially since I don't think he'll be asking for top money in free agency.
Yeah, we'll see about the contract that he gives up that he asked for there. Top 5 right fielder is, I mean, some people might think that's a little bold. Statistically, the numbers could actually prove he is. I think he's definitely got the potential to be if he puts together seasons like he did last year on top of each other. And I mean, also people are discrediting the fact that the dude missed a whole year and a half, like all of 2020, half of the year before that. Dude missed a bunch of time and then just randomly just comes back and is one of the best right fielders in the game, who everyone talks about when they talk about the Mariners. And they just assume, oh, wow, he's just good. So, he just does that. But it's like, that is seriously tough stuff to do and proves even furthermore his value. And of course, the veteran presence and all that good stuff. With that, we'll take a look at some Mariners news here. The one thing that I just realized I forgot to put in the transaction side of things is that George Kirby was also assigned to Double-A Arkansas. You might wonder why Double-A, isn't he close to the MLB? Well, Mariners actually have a tendency to like to have guys in Double-A and then call them up. That was the case with potentially Julio last year. They did that with Kyle Lewis. They did that with Jake Fraley. Not Jake Fraley, but they did it with Kyle Lewis and a couple other guys, but Double-A team with Evan White, that's the one. And they've done it with other guys in the past as well. That Double-A team is really talented and has great coaching, so I feel like that's good. But I feel like the Triple-A team this year is going to have better management and be a better team overall. So they could potentially do some more promoting from Triple-A, but maybe they just want to see how he responds at Double-A. And also give him some time to develop, because there's not exactly an open spot in their rotation right now. And I don't think they want to sacrifice his talent by putting him in the bullpen right now. So it makes a lot of sense. In other Mariners news, they land a couple of players in the top 100, Robbie Ray at 47 and Jesse Winker at 63. Those obviously are 2 new Mariners. So the Mariners from last year, even winning 90 games, had 0 players in the top 100. Big reason why. Pitchers in the bullpen were severely discredited, and the only 2 bullpen pitchers in the top 100 were Liam Hendriks and Josh Hader. So it was pretty much impossible to get in there with a reliever, which was the strength of the Mariners. Also, the top 100 was atrocious, but we don't need to get into that.
Mitch Haniger didn't make it. That is insane.
Yeah.
How did Cody Bellinger? Yeah.
Cody Bellinger is in the top 100, but not Mitch Haniger. Christian Yelich. I know they say that it's based on the last 3 seasons of stats, but then they also put Wander Franco in the 40s at, I think, 43, and the dude played half a season and they put him in there. So why can't you put Mitch Haniger in there with the great season he had last year when Bellinger was atrocious and Yelich was awful for the 2nd straight year?
Well, Bellinger was awful for 2 years in a row.
Yeah, they were both terrible for 2 years in a row. But, in 2019, he won MVP, so they are still holding on to that, as well as Yelich won MVP the year before that. So, and was second in MVP the year before that. So they're basically holding on to the 2019 season with those 2. Yelich, I could maybe see being decent again next year, but Bellinger was just so atrociously bad last year. Like, he could not touch a baseball to save his life. So I don't know if he's gonna get it back together. But anyways,
okay, I'm pretty sure that in spring training, Cody Bellinger has like a 85% strikeout rate.
He has been very bad in spring training. He's looked a lot like last season.
Yeah.
Anyways, and some more news. MLB on Fox. They did a fan vote, and the fans picked the Mariners to win the AL West. So I thought I'd throw that in there because it's the first group of anybody I've seen actually pick the Mariners to win the West. So that's pretty cool. Also, Matt Brash was named the 5th starter. So another fruit of has fallen right into our basket here. Matt Brash also coming from that Padres trade. with the Padres trade with Austin Nola that just continues to be great for us. Ty France, Taylor Trammell hasn't worked out yet, but he's there. Munoz in the bullpen is going to start pitching for us this year, and Matt Brash is now our 5th starter, and he was disgusting. He only gave up 1 run in spring training, and it was a solo home run from Charlie Blackmon, who's a great hitter. He was striking guys out left and right. He has nasty stuff, and he only gave up a couple of hits over the course of spring training. Also, final roster assignments are coming soon. We'll get those to you in probably our next episode. Robbie Ray was named the opening day starter in Minnesota. Marco Gonzalez will start the home opener, so he'll be 2nd or 3rd. I think it's 3rd. Yes, 3rd. And then he'll be the 2 starter, and he'll start the home opener. And then also potential of a delay of the opener in Minneapolis because there is snow expected to be there. It is expected to stop snowing a few hours prior to game time, but I don't know if that will still allow for play because they obviously do not have a retractable roof or a dome. They used to have a dome. They do not anymore, so we'll see how that works out. And then, so Julio Rodriguez makes the team. That's obviously huge news. He'll compete with guys like Adley Rutschman, Bobby Witt, Spencer Torkelson, Shane Baz, Riley Green, and others for American League Rookie of the Year. And then the last couple of pieces of news here is the Mariners will carry 3 catchers at least to start the season. We mentioned in our last episode that the season will start off with 28 roster spots, which is 2 more than normal, pretty much like September call-ups. And so they will also keep 9 or 10 relievers. They've obviously already lost Sadler for the year. And I forgot to put it in the news. I'm just realizing, but Ken Giles will be out a few weeks with a finger injury. So we've lost a couple of guys there. We signed Sergio Romo, some other guys we mentioned, but obviously coming off the shortened spring training as well, you can't get these relief pitchers to go back to back days, and starters might be shorter in their outings at first. So they carry some extra relievers. They have 3 catchers. Why? Because Terens cannot catch and he can hit. So we want him on our team to hit. We do not want him to catch. So we have Cal Raleigh and Tom Murphy because Murphy can catch and Raleigh can catch better than Terens. So we have those 2. And then Terens basically is on the side to hit exclusively. So Jake, Rodriguez, Kirby, Brash, guys in the top 100, home opener might get postponed. What the Mariners are doing with their roster construction. What do you make of all of this news?
It's gonna be a good season. I'm excited for Brash. I think he's gonna be dirty. I could really see him with a ERA in the 3s, which would be nice. And then I think Robbie Ray starting is good, but I would be very disappointed if the home opener or season opener was delayed.
For sure. And then, so you get to see Julio Rodriguez this season. We're going to do our predictions later, but what do you make of Julio? You think he's going to be like an everyday guy? What do you think's going on there?
I think Julio play quite a bit, honestly. He fits in as a starter. It all depends on what we do with Winker, whether we let him field or, slide him in at DH, and then whether or not Winker plays against lefties as well. So I think Julio could probably play every day as a starting center fielder or left fielder.
For sure. Yeah. So that's all good stuff there. I'll mention a couple of things on spring training here just before we get into the main topic of the episode, or like the finishing topic of the season predictions. And so in spring training right now, basically good stuff going on for the Mariners. They've won a couple of games here and there. it is spring training, so not the finals. We're not too worried about necessarily. Gilbert got his last start. Ray looked decent in his last start. They both struggled a little bit, but they're just more focused on getting their pitch count up and whatnot. I think one guy that's really struggled is Eric Swanson. He'll probably be on the roster because we're going to keep 9 or 10 relievers, but he's struggled in spring training, so we'll see how that goes. Julio's been great. Kellenic looked great in his last spring training game yesterday with the home run. Dylan Moore had a home run yesterday. It'll be interesting to see how he does it. Toro's obviously been great. Torrens 3 for 4 yesterday in spring training game. He's been great. So it's good to see all these guys. The one dude that's really been slumping in spring training is Jesse Winker, but I mean, get your slumps out of the way right now, right? So we get into the actual regular season and we're going to get to see Jesse Winker hopefully turn things around. Today on the mound for the Mariners, I didn't check, but I believe it's going to be Chris Flexen against the Diamondbacks, who are throwing out their C team. We're throwing out what is believed to potentially be our starting lineup for the rest of the season. And that lineup consists of Frazier leading off, then France, Winker, Haniger, Suarez, Rodriguez in center field, then Kellenic, Murphy, and Crawford. Things can change if it's a righty or a lefty. If it's a lefty, I'd assume that they might do things differently, but well, actually, if it's a lefty, it'll probably be Tom Murphy most of the time, but I look at this and that's a pretty believable lineup. The only one that I'm, guys that will slot in more often than not are going to be like, if Kyle Lewis comes back, he could play, which by the way, he actually apparently told Scott Service the other day he's feeling great, but he's still got to get some games in the minor leagues and some at-bats there. And then the other one is obviously Torrens because he's been hitting great in spring training and he really got it going last year. So it'll be interesting to see where he slots in the lineup this year, but we'll talk about that in another episode. Get right into our season predictions here for the MLB. We start with the divisional standings. We're going to go through each division and give Jake's and mine real quick. And then we each have one sleeper team in each division. These are teams that, regardless of where they are placed in the division, we think could outperform our expectations or the public's expectations. So it could be a team that we have first or second that we think is going to be really good because they're a sleeper, or they could be someone that we have lower on our list that is a sleeper, either because they'll be better than terrible, which is new for them, or because they might have the ability to outperform where we have them ranked. So it's really a whole wide range of things that go into these decisions. So we'll get right into the AL West. My AL West predictions is going to be, I still have the Astros 1, and then the Mariners 2, Angels 3, Rangers 4, and Athletics 5. The Athletics garbage fire right now. Basically, they're selling everything for prospects. Rangers have made a lot of good moves, enough to move them into 4th with the Athletics selling away, but not quite enough without pitching yet. Angels have made some decent moves, but I still don't think that they're that team, but the Athletics falling helps them. Then the Mariners, obviously, I'm really high on this year, but I got to be a little bit realistic in the fact that we have not made the playoffs or won the division, obviously, in over 20 years, which is the longest streak in major sports. So as much as I want to get really hyped up, because I am, and I'm super excited, I also don't want to raise the bar too high so that if we fall a little bit short of what I could be expecting, then I'm not as disappointed. And I want to see them do it before I actually predict it to happen. It's not bold. It's not necessarily bold, but I'm taking more of a realistic approach. And the Rangers are my sleeper team. Jake will tell you his too, but I really like the moves they made. They have a great offensive team up the middle, and I think that they could potentially outperform my expectations here and obviously outperform what they did last season, but I just think the pitching is what's holding them back. So Jake, why don't you take us through your top 5 or your standings in the American League West?
Yeah, I've got the Mariners in at number 1. I think we were a couple games behind them, like 5. It was like 5 games behind
I
them.
believe it was 6 games.
6 games. 6 games behind them last year, where we barely got to that point. And, we got better. Astros got worse. So I think that's enough to eclipse that deficit. And then I've got Astros 2, Angels 3, Rangers 4, Athletics 5. My sleeper team's the Rangers, just because I can see them maybe being better than the Astros if there's injuries involved. So like that would mean Verlander's out and Jose Altuve goes down and Bregman goes down and Alvarez is down. It's going to take a lot for the Rangers to move up very much. But I do see it being really realistic that they move up to third in the division. And I can see them kind of pushing towards the playoff spot in the wild card, but I don't see them getting there. But again, they're a sleeper, so they could surprise. I can see them surprising.
Yeah, and the one thing I wanted to mention last about this division is it'll be interesting with the Astros. I think a big part of their success and whether the Mariners can pass them will be obviously the Mariners, but whether or not Jeremy Pena, who is making his MLB debut this season, 24-year-old shortstop, can fill in effectively for Carlos Correa, because that's obviously a big hole on that team. Anyways, we get into the next division. It is going to be the American League Central, which was pretty bad last year, other than the White Sox. The Guardians, who are the Indians last year, severely underperformed. The Twins, who were expected to potentially win the division, ended up being terrible. And then the Royals were bad, and the Tigers had a winning record in every month except for the first month of the season, which was April. So they outperformed expectations, but only one playoff team last year. My standings for this division still have the White Sox on top. I know Lynn's out for a little while here. I know they lose Crochet and they trade Kimbrel. But they did make some moves. I mean, they signed Kendall Graveman. We'll see if they can get him going again, the former Mariner. They signed Joe Kelly, which is a great move because he hates the Astros. And then they still have good starting pitching. I know they don't have Rodon, but they still have depth there with Michael Kopech kind of coming up this year. And then they're going to have Robert and Jimenez for a full year, and then you add Pollock to that outfield too. And I mean, this offense is looking really good. Grandal, Abreu, Moncada, Tim Anderson. I mean, seriously dangerous lineup, and so I would expect them to win the division. I actually have the Tigers taking second. I really liked a lot of their moves. Javier Baez is fine. He could potentially return to being good. I like Rodriguez and Pineda in the rotation with a lot of their young guys like Mize and Manning and Skubal. And then they obviously got Akil Baddoo. I really like Jamer Candelario. Eric Haas is kind of like a sleeper catcher. They also traded for Tucker Barnhart. And then they got, they got other guys too. They have other talented players that I, for some reason, cannot think of. But I really like the moves they've made this offseason. They have a solid bullpen, too. Obviously, Gregory Soto was an all-star closer last year. So I like the moves they've made to come up. Twins, obviously, Sonny Gray, Carlos Correa. Moves like that will help you move up. So I got them third. Guardians make no moves, spend almost no money. But with their pitching rotation, I could see them being fourth. And obviously Jose Ramirez to power the entire offense. And then the Royals, Bobby Witt could potentially make this team better than it is. But like, cool, you signed Zach Greinke for probably his last year in the MLB. But that's really all they did. And they're maybe hoping on rebound seasons from like Michael Taylor and Carlos Santana. But I don't think they're playoff contenders or division contenders whatsoever. But it will be fun to watch Bobby Witt. My sleeper team is the Tigers, even though they're second, because I think they're going to outperform other people's expectations. And honestly, if the White Sox continue to have injuries and the Tigers, if they're young pieces like Torkelson and Green and Riley Green later in the year, and Baddoo and Skubal and Manning and Mize and whatnot, really perform this year and come together around a winning team, they could seriously be dangerous in that division. So, Jake, your American League Central.
So I have the White Sox number one, same reasons as you, but I have the Twins number two, Tigers number three, Royals 4, Guardians 5. I don't think the Tigers are improved enough. But my sleeper team is the Twins, not because they're a sleeper in their division, but because they're a sleeper for a playoff spot. Chris Archer, solid veteran guy. They've got Dylan Bundy. Ew. Sorry. They've got Sonny Gray, who's a really good pitcher. They've got some really good young guys too. Joe Ryan, Griffin Jacks, I've heard a lot of good things about. Bailey Ober. Hey, they have Joe Smith. Wow. But then they have like Gary Sanchez, a catcher, and then their infield looks really good with Sano, Polanco, Correo, and Urshela. And then their outfielder looks really good as well. Alex Kirilloff, if he, takes another step, Max Kepler is solid. And Byron Buxton, when healthy, is one of the best players in the league. So I think if this team stays healthy, I think they could make the wildcard game.
Yeah, for sure. So we get now into one of the most talented divisions in baseball, the AL East. It was very good last year. They had 3 playoff teams with the Blue Jays right on the outside of the playoffs, and then there's the Orioles. So I actually have the Blue Jays winning this division. I really love the moves they've made. They're even talking about trading for Jose Ramirez to be their second baseman, and if they do that, then wow, that would be seriously good. But I mean, Bichette, you're talking about Vlad Jr., you're talking about Teoscar Hernandez, Lourdes Gurriel Jr., and then I mean they lose Robbie Ray, they replace him with Gosman, so it's not maybe quite the same, but still solid. Added the bullpen a little bit, and then they also lose, of course, Tim Anderson, but they trade for Matt Chapman. So like they're making a ton of moves, and I really love this team
Marcus
defensively.
Semien.
Yeah, who did I say they lost?
You said Tim Anderson.
Oh, sorry. They lose Marcus Semien. they had Matt Chapman. So Matt Chapman's going to be great for them defensively at third. They really needed a third baseman. Maybe if he can turn things around offensively, they could really get things going. A lot of it's going to come down to the pitching. They obviously signed Yusei Kikuchi, which is fine, I guess, for the back of the rotation. And then Alek Manoah, maybe he'll be really good this year again. He had a solid rookie debut, or rookie season. Rays, always really good. Didn't make a ton of moves. Didn't really lose anybody. Wander Franco's awesome, but we'll have to see if he can take the next step. And the Rays are just always good. Then I actually have the Yankees third. And I know they missed out on a lot of guys, but there's just something about the Yankees that, like, I really don't want them to be third. If we could pick teams that are overrated, like if I could pick instead of a sleeper, like what would the opposite be? A wide awaker? Like, I don't know. But like a team that it could potentially be good, like I have rated higher, but could easily fall and not be very good. And that's the Yankees for me, because there's so many moving pieces. Like, who the hell is going to be their starting catcher? Josh Donaldson is their third base, could easily fall off. Gleyber Torres could easily not be good. Joey Gallo could easily not be good. Giancarlo Stanton and Aaron Judge could both easily be injured. I know it's Higashioka, but like, is he really going to be their starter? Is it going to be Trevino? Is it going to be Ben Rortvedt? Like, what's going on there? Will Anthony Rizzo actually be good? Like, so many guys, will they actually be good? And then their rotation. Severino really going to be healthy and be good? Like, do we seriously believe that? What about their closing situation? Is it going to be Chapman? Like, is Chad Green wasn't great closing last year either. So a lot of question marks. Then there's the Red Sox. I do like the Red Sox a lot. Their offense is super good, and they obviously just got Trevor Story. But their pitching staff to me is so bad. I mean, I'll see if I can pull it up here real quick. But here's the thing. Right now, they have Nathan Eovaldi, who is a really good starter. I like Eovaldi. Here's the problem. Chris Sale is not going to be healthy for at least a couple of weeks. Will he stay healthy throughout the season? Will he be good? And then they have Nick Pivetta, Tanner Huck, and Michael Wacha. And if I said that I think that that's actually 3 MLB caliber starters, I would be plain lying to you. Maybe Nick Pivetta, but not Michael Wacha or Tanner Hook. I really do not like their starting rotation at all. And so it'll be interesting to see if they can get competent pitching this season. And also their outfield. I mean, I like Verdugo, JD Martinez, the DH, but Kike Hernandez and Jackie Bradley, are they actually going to be good? We'll have to wait and see. So, and then obviously the Orioles are last. It'll be fun to watch Adley Rutschman. That is all I care about with that team.
For me, I have the Rays number 1, the Blue Jays number 2, Red Sox number 3, Yankees 4, Orioles 5. Literally all the exact same reasons as you. I also have the Red Sox as a sleeper. I just think this division is going to be fighting for a playoff spot, fighting for the last playoff spot between the Red Sox and the Yankees. And I don't know, there's something about the Red Sox that just makes me want to pick them more than the Yankees. Maybe it's because I hate the Yankees.
No, but I had the Red Sox as my sleeper. I mean, I see you have them as a sleeper, but I had them as my sleeper because I have them ranked 4th in the division. And with that offense, they could easily pass the Yankees and maybe even the Rays or the Blue Jays. But why do you have them as a sleeper, Jake?
Because I sure as hell am not picking the Orioles.
Yep, definitely not picking the Orioles to be a sleeper, and the other teams are not
And
sleepers.
the only reason I picked the Red Sox is because I see them at 3 and a lot of people are going to have them at 4. So go
Okay.
Orioles.
Go Orioles indeed.
Let's go Shed Long.
Shed Long is on the Orioles, so Mariners legend there. Also Rougned Odor, aka Roughed Odor. Anyways, we get into the National League with the NL West, who had 2 teams over 100 wins last year. The Giants, out of nowhere, of course, won the division, and then it was the Dodgers, and then the Dodgers beat the Giants, and then they fell to the Braves in the playoffs. That's how that division went. Padres underperformed. Then it was Rockies and D-backs. So my prediction for the season, I have the Dodgers won because they are a super team and they're ruining the MLB, but that's a conversation for another day. And then I have the Padres at 2 because I think the Giants will have some regression, as well as the Padres will have some improvement. I like Manaea for pitching depth. I know they don't have Tatis right now. They'll have him later in the year, but I like the rest of that team. Ha-Seong Kim could maybe take a step in his second MLB season. And I feel like they have a good cast of other players. Luke Voit, trading for him to get him at first and getting Hosmer out of the lineup is a good move. Then we got the Giants at 3 because of what they did last year. We'll have to see if their veterans can continue to perform, but Posey retires, so you're relying a lot on Joey Bart. Belt is old. Crawford is old. Longoria is injured now, and so he'll be out for a month or 2. And then obviously they lose Gausman and bring in Carlos Rodon. So we'll see if Rodon can stay healthy and how big the loss of Gausman is. And then their bullpen as well will be interesting to watch as well. Then we got the Rockies at number 4 and the Diamondbacks at 5 because the Rockies are substantially better than the Diamondbacks. And maybe they pass the Giants if things completely fall apart, but I don't think they're going to go too high. I think they're an underrated team. I like their rotation more than other people. I really like German Marquez. Kyle Freeland finished top 3 in Cy Young Award voting back in 2017. And so maybe, just maybe, he can show some form of that kind of a pitcher, but I doubt it. And then they just extended Senzatella. They obviously get Austin Gomber, who's a solid starter, a lefty in that Arenado deal. And then they added to their bullpen, Alex Colomé is fine. But I really like CJ Cron. I like Brendan Rodgers. They extend Ryan McMahon. Jose Iglesias is fine, but they signed Chris Bryant, so that elevates the ceiling. They have Charlie Blackmon. And then they trade for Randall Grichuk, who's going to hit a lot of home runs in that park. And then they have Connor Joe, who's got some potential. Jonathan Dawson, center field. Sam Hilliard. A bunch of guys that they can platoon and see if somebody will work. So that is why I have the Rockies at 4 and also as my sleeper team, which is why I said so much about them. But I honestly think that they could be better than people expect. But I don't think they're going to contend in this division because it is really talented. And then the Diamondbacks are the bottom dwellers. Maybe they have a couple of decent players that they can ship off. Maybe Madison Bumgarner will finally pitch good in Arizona so that they can trade him for some prospects. But other than that, I don't see anything going on there.
Yeah, for me, I have Dodgers 1, Giants 2, Padres 3, Rockies 4, Diamondbacks 5. My sleeper is the Giants, and I have them above the Padres because I think everyone's sleeping on this team. for the exact reasons why you said they're going to fall off. They've got older players, but they have a ton of platoon guys. They have a bunch of solid guys. They have Donna. I believe they still have Donovan Solano. They got Solano.
He's actually on the Reds.
Why didn't I know that? Okay. Ignore that take. They have Yastrzemski. They have Darren Ruff. They have Jock Peterson. The outfield is just kind of loaded with a lot of guys. And then, Crawford is still good. Longoria, if he comes back, I'm not sure what his injury is, but if he comes back, he'll be solid. Brandon Belt is really good, especially in that park. I'm not sure who their second baseman is now, but
it's a good question.
They're pitching. They have Rodon. They have, is it Alex Wood?
Correct.
Who I'm thinking of.
Yeah, and not to mention, obviously also in that rotation, Logan Webb, Rodon, you mentioned Alex Wood. Also have DeSclafani, who's solid, and then they signed Alex Cobb, who's had good years before, but was not great with the Angels too. So, yeah.
Yeah, I just have them being a lot better than people see them as.
For sure. And also, so their second baseman is Tommy La Stella, who's actually, and then you mentioned utility guys. Other guys they have at utility: Lamont Wade Jr., Austin Slater, Steven Duggar, like so many utility outfield guys. They also have Wilmer Flores, who's a utility guy. So a ton of those guys. And then not to mention Tyro Estrada, Mauricio Dubon, but so many depth guys, and they really do platoon really nicely to fit matchups against pitching and pinch hit and whatnot and all that good stuff. So if they end up being really good, I wouldn't doubt it. I think they could have really good pitching. I just don't know. They're definitely not going to be 107 win good, but I just think the Padres, with taking a step up, I'm not saying the Giants are going to fall off a cliff. The Padres taking a step up potentially could push them down. And then Jake, you mentioned Giants as your sleeper team. So we'll get into the NL Central here. I have the Brewers first, who won the division last year. Cardinals, obviously the great run, made the wild card. They were second in the division last year. And then it was Cubs, Reds, Pirates, or no, Reds, Cubs, Pirates. I have the Brewers first, the Cubs 2, Cardinals 3, Reds 4, Pirates 5. So Brewers, obviously one of the best rotations in the MLB. They signed McCutchen and they trade for Hunter Renfroe, who's fine. So they make those moves, but they got that rotation, so they're going to be fine. Maybe Christian Yelich turns things around too. That would be really nice for them, but we'll see. Cubs, I have as my sleeper team, man. I like a lot of the moves that they made. I think is the biggest reason why I have them here, as well as, the Reds make a bunch of moves to tank. The Cardinals do absolutely almost nothing in free agency, as well as Jack Flaherty being injured and a whole host of those things. But I like the addition of Stroman and Wade Miley, who was underrated last year, to the rotation there. Seiya Suzuki, I think, could really break out this year. They signed Clint Frazier, who's a fine utility outfielder. They get Nick Madrigal to play this year. He was solid with the White Sox, solid contact hitter, and that's who they traded Ryan Tepera for, or no, Kimbrel for? One of those two. I believe it was Kimbrel that they traded him for. But nonetheless, he's going to be solid. And then Frank Schwindel, will he continue to be do what he did last year? I mean, if he can, then they're really set, because Wilson Contreras and Yan Gomes is a great pairing of catchers. Andrelton Simmons is great at defense. At shortstop, they also have Nico Horner for depth. Jonathan Villar is a solid veteran depth piece. He can play third. And then they also have Patrick Wisdom, who had a nice little breakout-ish season. And then maybe Ian Happ will finally be not terrible. And then Jason Hayward too, who's a little bit old, but he's there too. So I really do like their team more than a lot of people. I don't think it's really going to be some big contender or anything, but I think they have the ability to take second in this division, because if the Cardinals don't go on that run last year, they're really not that great of a team. So that's why I feel like they're going to be there. And then the Cardinals, pretty much the same team, a lot of old guys, cool, you signed Albert Pujols. That's fun, but I just don't know if it really does it for me. Great defense, fine pitching, but The Reds sell everybody away. And then there's the Pirates, who are in a class of their own, but it'll be fun to watch Reynolds, Cabrian Hayes, and O'Neill Cruz. Jake, you're NL Central.
So obviously I have the Pirates. No, I have the Brewers number 1, but I have the Cardinals 2, Cubs 3, Reds 4, Pirates 5. I just think the Cardinals just have enough to get by.
I could see it. I just feel like the Cubs with their signings have more upside, but the Cardinals, they're relying on a lot of old guys.
The Cubs have some upside, but like, is Seiya Suzuki going to be great? I mean, I'll get into that later, but I think he might be really good. But like, what else is there? You have Nico Horner, Nick Madrigal. You have a whole lot of like Marcus Stroman. Will he be great? Like, I just don't think they have enough there to be better, but they are my sleeper. And I think, again, those pieces could make them better than the Cardinals, but not much better.
For sure. And I mean, the Reds and the Pirates, there's not much to talk about anyways. So I'll jump right into the National League East, who was supposed to be the best division in baseball last year, and then they were terrible until the Braves, of course, won the World Series. Anyways, so I have the Braves taking the division this year. They ended up squeezing it out last year, and they, of course, added Matt Olson to replace Freddie Freeman. They signed Kenley Jansen and also Colin McHugh, who's fantastic in the bullpen, and they re-signed Eddie Rosario, make some moves there. Phillies, I have second place just because could have a really nice lineup. Get Schwarber, get Nick Castellanos, and then some other moves there. And I think their rotation is pretty solid overall. Still have Kyle Gibson, but obviously Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola. And their bullpen is pretty decent-ish. That'll probably be a big question. Then defense will be a big question for them. But can they get rebound years on the left side of the infield from Alec Baum and from Didi Gregorius? I think will be a big question for them. Then the Mets, they made a lot of moves, but they also have injuries. Scherzer, DeGrom injured. We'll see how that all shakes out. And the biggest reason I have them in third place is because Mets are going to Met, like they do it every year. Last year, we said the same thing about them in the offseason. They built on that with more good moves this offseason, but like, will Lindor be good again? Will Alonso be consistent? Will Dom Smith be good? Will Brandon Nimmo
hold that Dom Smith talk? He might end up going to the Padres eventually.
That trade actually fell through though, because they didn't want to take on Hosmer's contract.
Well, you never know. One trade offer can lead to another.
I guess you never know. So maybe Dom Smith won't be there, but same thing goes for Brandon Nimmo, goes for Jeff McNeil. Will they be good? They lose Michael Conforto, which he wasn't good last year, but he's been good in the past. Still shocked he's not on the team yet.
Well, apparently, I think it has something to do with Michael Conforto had this surgery.
Yeah, shoulder surgery is going to hurt, but I mean, I feel like he's definitely even maybe with not as good of a shoulder better. And I mean, if he had shoulder surgery, maybe you can use that. Maybe teams are trying to use that as leverage in money talks, and Conforto's not liking it. Maybe that's why there's a divide there, but we'll see. Of the Marlins in fourth, and then the Nationals last. The Nationals have some interesting pieces to watch this year because they have Juan Soto and they have some interesting prospects, but they are going to be terrible. They have Josh Bell, so maybe he'll be good again. I mean, he was good on the Pirates, so why can't he be good on the Nationals, right? But anyways, I do like some of the moves that the Marlins have made this offseason to try and get better. We mentioned the one at the top of the episode with the bullpen. But Alcantara, and then a lot of guys that are kind of young pitchers that have high upside, but also low floors. Rogers, Lopez, Lisa Hernandez, Jesus Luzardo. The guy that you mentioned before we started the episode that's still a rookie.
Oh, who are we talking about? What
For the
team are we talking about?
Marlins. The Marlins.
Sandy?
No.
No.
He was a top prospect pitcher, starting pitcher. Anyways.
Oh, Sixto
Sanchez. And then they made a move for Jacob Stallings at catcher, which is good defensively. They also have Williams Astudillo on this team, which is legendary. But anyways, Jazz Chisholm's a nice young player. Joey Wendell's a nice player. Brian Anderson as well. And then Miguel Rojas. And then you got Jorge Soler, Avisail Garcia in the corner outfield. So 2 solid bats. And then Garrett Cooper at DH, which is good. He's a solid bat. And then Jesus Sanchez won the job in center field too. And then you also have John Birdie as a rotational player. So I think they have a decent team, but I don't know if it's enough to really contend in this division.
So yeah, my division looks like the Braves, then the Mets, then the Phillies. Phillies and Mets will be battling for number 2, pretty much in my eyes. The Braves could fall. The Braves could fall as well. You just never know what it's going to happen in this division.
Not to mention getting Ronald Acuna Jr. back, but
Well, yeah, but
we'll see.
Are we going to get first half of last year Braves or second half Braves? So, then we have Marlins 4, Nationals 5. I think the Mets have a lot of talent that will ultimately disappoint, as always. I'm not a huge fan of the Phillies and what they're doing, so I have them at 3. But then Marlins are my sleeper as well. Looking at that team, of course, I really like Trevor Rogers. I really like Sandy Alcantara, Sixto Sanchez, Eliezer Hernandez, Pablo Lopez is really good. They've got some really good arms in the bullpen. Richard Blyer, Dylan Floro, Zach Pop is solid. Tanner Scott will be okay. Anthony Bass is fine. And then, Stallings, of course. I like Aguilar. I like his bat. I love watching Brian Anderson, as I'll tell you later. And, they've got a lot of Miguel Rojas and Jess Chisholm, Joey Wendell, John Birdie, lots of versatility. And you said, I have no idea why you said it, Jorge Soler in the field. I feel like that would be terrible.
I was just going off the ESPN depth chart, but
Yeah, I would definitely put Garrett Cooper in the field over Jorge Soler.
Garrett Cooper is pretty much equally awful in the outfield. I mean, Jorge Soler played outfield for the Braves in the World Series.
I guess. I don't know. It seems kind of sketchy, but yeah, I think honestly, this team could be competing for, like this division, is just so hot and cold. Almost any one of these teams could end up winning it.
Except the Nationals.
I mean, even last year, the Nationals were not that bad. You never know how far Juan Soto will carry.
They weren't that bad until they really traded everything away. Here's the problem. Their offense isn't that bad, honestly. It's not a good offense, but there are definitely pieces there with Juan Soto and Josh Bell and whatnot.
I'm not okay.
Their pitching rotation is so bad. Have you seen their bullpen? Have you seen who is in their bullpen? Can you name one guy that is in their bullpen? Tanner Rainey. Oh, wow.
Okay.
Tanner Rainey.
Okay.
You know who Tanner Rainey is? Tanner Rainey is the dude that came in the world. Tanner Rainey came in the World Series and gave up 7 runs every time he came in the game. He's terrible.
Okay. I'm not saying it's very likely. I'm saying a lot of things have to happen.
Impossible. Just say they're the worst team in the division.
The Marlins made the playoffs 2 years ago.
There were 7 playoff teams that year, and they traded for Starling Marte. They were dealers. They were trading away prospects to get
How
players.
how do you know that the Nationals won't do that because of the timetable on Juan
Because-
Soto? Hey, no. Juan Soto denied his contract extension.
Exactly. So that means that here's the deal. Either they extend Soto and they have him for 14 years so they don't have to worry, or they don't extend him and he leaves and they continue to rebuild.
But here's what I'm thinking. What if Juan Soto is saying, I need you to build a team around me before I can sign a contract.
Well,
I
they
need you
are
to show me. I need you to show me that you're gonna help me win if I sign this contract.
they
Either
have
way.
a lot of good prospects, but they're the only way to get guys. Here's the thing. They could do work in free agency, but not until next year. Because if they wanted to make moves this year, it would have to be through trades, and they're not going to trade away their prospects that they just traded away everyone to get.
Okay, whatever. Move on.
Anyways,
Move on.
moving on. Playoff
I'm going
pictures.
first. I'm going first.
Jake
Get out
will
of here.
give you his American League playoff picture now.
I got number 1 is the Rays. Got number 2 is the M's. Number 3 is the Sox, White Sox. I got 4 Blue Jays, 5 Astros, 6 Red Sox. Pretty straightforward. I just think the last playoff seed will come down to the Yankees versus the Red Sox, and I think the Red Sox can pull it out. Maybe the Twins can get there. I don't see anything like the Angels or Rangers doing it. So yeah, pretty straightforward. And
I
then
think- Yeah, go
was
ahead
it?
with your NL.
I'll just go with my NL. I got 1 is the Dodgers, 2 is the Brewers, 3 Braves, 4 Giants, 5 Padres, 6 Cardinals. And you might be asking, why the Cardinals? Why not the Mets? Why not the anyone else?
Phillies.
Phillies. Why not the Phillies? Well, I don't trust the Mets and the Phillies to actually make it. I just think, especially with the Mets not having DeGrom for a while, and Scherzer looks kind of beat up, and their offense is so inconsistent. And then the Phillies, I'm just not a fan of the Phillies. I think the Cardinals could maybe slide into that final playoff spot.
All fair points. Yeah, so I'll slide right in there to my playoff pictures. So in the AL, I have the Blue Jays in the 1 seed, Astros 2, White Sox 3, and then the first wild card Rays. Second wild card is the Mariners. So don't worry, Mariners fans, I still have the Mariners in the playoffs. And then the Yankees at 6. So that'd be interesting. Obviously, I think it could be more competitive of a playoff picture here in the AL, sort of like in the NFL this last year, where there's a lot more teams competitive. Obviously, the Twins Tigers potentially could be competitive. I don't think the Guardians or Royals would be close, but maybe. Obviously, the Angels could be competitive, maybe the Rangers. And then, also the Red Sox will be right there competing too. So then in the National League, I have Dodgers, Braves, Brewers. Pretty straightforward. And then I have the Phillies at 4, Padres at 5, and the Giants at 6. Obviously, the Mets are another team that could make it in there. And then potentially the Cardinals could be competing for that spot, and the Cubs could be competing for that spot too. But I think the NL is more top heavy and a little bit more straightforward in my opinion, but things could always change. So we'll get into some award winners now before we get into our World Series. We have MVP awards, we have Cy Youngs, and we have Rookie of the Year. We're not going to get into all the Gold Glove, Silver Slugger stuff because that'd be way too specific. So award winners, MVP, American League, I went with a sleeper pick with Aaron Judge, and National League, a bigger sleeper pick with Matt Olson. I let Jake pick his first. That was part of the reason why I didn't pick who I wanted to pick in the National League. But I mean, Freddie Freeman's won an MVP award at first base with the Braves, and I think Matt Olson, with his youth still and what he showed last year, could potentially be better than Freddie Freeman in the future. So with that, I think that Matt Olson could be a pick for that spot, and he hits a lot of home runs. And Aaron Judge the same. If he stays healthy, plays great defense, hits a lot of home runs. So Jake, your MVPs.
I kept it nice and simple. I picked the two best players in the MLB, Mike Trout and Juan Soto.
It is unfortunate that the MLB doesn't agree with you for some reason, but Mike Trout and Juan Soto. I don't think that Ohtani can get away with winning MVP again. He deserved to win an MVP for what he did, but will he stay that consistent with durability concerns? I don't know. And also, he only pitched just over 100 innings, and he was not very good offensively in the last 2 months of the year. But the fact that he hit at a high level and pitched at a high level over the course of a season in the MLB is impressive enough to win MVP. But if he does that every year, I don't think we should give it to him every year. Anyways, we go to the Cy Young winners. For the American League, I picked Shane Bieber, a former Cy Young winner, and also Brandon Woodruff in the National League. So they have Corbin Burns win it last year, and Brandon Woodruff, his teammate, who was almost as good as him, wins it this year for me. So Jake, your winners.
I got Robbie Ray because the Mariners are going to win a lot more, and he's going to strike a ton of dudes out, pitch a lot of innings, pitch very well. And then I got NL is Walker Buehler because Cy Young voting is stupid, and all that really seems to matter is strikeouts and wins, and he'll get plenty of strikeouts, he'll get plenty of wins on the Dodgers, and he'll have a solid ERA along with that. So I think it's pretty realistic to see Walker Buehler win one.
It is rather ridiculous how much they take into account wins when they're in a completely irrelevant stat at this point. So we go to Rookie of the Year. A whole lot of candidates for this, especially with the new rules in the CBA trying to get rid of service time manipulation. A lot more players are in this conversation. And nowadays, there is a new rule, actually, with these players. When you call up your top prospect, if they finish in the top 3 of the Rookie of the Year running, you get draft picks for it. And if they finish in the top 3 of the MVP, you get more draft picks that are even better. So you get compensation if you call up your young guys and they perform well. So there are some guys here that could potentially meet that criteria. For me, in the American League, I got the pick of Julio Rodriguez. Obviously, get to root for him for the Mariners for that reason. And the way he looked in spring training, the way that he has gone from just kind of like a pure power guy to he hits the ball to the other field hard. He pulls the ball, he hits it up the middle. He can really run. He was stealing bases off of guys in spring training. Opposite field power he showed in spring training. His defense has significantly improved to the point where he can be a competent defensive center fielder. So you can put him in there, but he can also be a good corner outfielder. So I think he'll be great. And then I picked Oneil Cruz in the National League. Wanted to pick Seiya Suzuki just because I feel like could be like the next really talented Japanese player. Didn't work out with Ha-Seong Kim, but has worked out with Ohtani, worked out with Ichiro. I think it could work out with Suzuki. And so I wanted to pick him, but Jake obviously will talk more about him. So I picked Oneil Cruz from the Pirates, who they sent down for service time manipulation. He'll be up in a couple of weeks, though, and I think he's a big shortstop that hits bombs. I think he's got the potential to do it.
Yeah, in the AL, I got Bobby Witt. I just think he's got the most opportunity to just be free. He's got some of the least expectations around winning games, and so he's just going to go out, play loose, get all the opportunity in the world. In the NL, Seiya Suzuki, he's a pro coming over, a Japanese pro coming over, so I think he'll bring some really good experience that these rookies don't have typically. Plus, he's really hyped up, and I just kind of believe in the hype. That's pretty much it for me.
For sure. So yeah, that's basically all the rookies there. We go on to our onto our World Series picks here. So for me, I went with the easy one and picked the Dodgers, although I feel like, it could possibly obviously not happen. They choke a lot in the playoffs. And when a manager guarantees they're going to win the World Series, But one thing that I sometimes like to do is use, reverse, and I forget the phrase, so reverse psychology on myself sometimes. Anyways, and so by picking the Dodgers, I'm hoping it means that they will not come anywhere near the World Series. And then I picked the Blue Jays because I genuinely think they have the talent to be there. But I do have concerns with them winning in the playoffs since they haven't done it with these new cast of young guys and the pitching at the top end. I think they have good pitching depth, but the top end pitching, and if their offense ever gets shut down by a good pitcher like the Dodgers, then they could be in trouble in the playoffs. So for that, I have the Dodgers winning the World Series. If that happens, I might quit podcasting forever. But if I just spoke that into existence, I might quit podcasting forever, but we'll see. Hopefully they don't, but I do pick the Dodgers to win the World Series. So Jake, let's hear about yours.
So I picked the White Sox versus Brewers because I felt like it. I have no real.
Fair enough.
You know me. Something that you listeners might not know is I tend to go off a gut feeling a lot of the time, and a lot of the time it ends up being right. And I don't know.
Pretty shocking how often he's right about gut feelings. Like last year in the Mariners opener, which happened to be the home opener against the Giants, this dude says when we're losing the game, and this guy says in like the third inning, he goes, Jake Fraley's going to win on a walk-off walk. So what do you know? We get to the end of the game, bases loaded, and Jake Fraley wins on a freaking walk-off walk. He predicts a walk-off walk from one of the worst hitters on the team. A walk-off walk, which means he's also predicting that the bases are loaded in a walk-off scenario at the end of this game, and also predicting that we come back, and predicting that it's Fraley at the plate, and predicting that he gets walked. And he's still... Like if he would have bet on that, the odds for that bet probably would have been like a plus 10,000 or plus 20,000. He could have won some serious money betting on that.
Another one I have is I've made $100 bet on an NBA playoff series, and this playoff series happened to be, I think it was 2016, the NBA championship between the Cavs and the Warriors, and the Cavs were down 3-1, and I bet $100 that they would still win, even though it had never happened before, and it happened.
And how much did you win?
Oh, it was just a straight up $100 for 100 bet with just some guy.
Oh, I thought you bet on the okay.
And then I never saw him again, so I never got my money.
Fair enough.
But
anyway, so you got White Sox and Brewers. Who do you have win in the World Series?
I didn't. Also, the reason I was going to pick the Dodgers, but the reason I didn't is literally because Dave Roberts said they're going to win the World Series. So that means they're probably going to be a first round exit. I'll give it to the Brewers. Why not?
Sounds good. So our last little thing here, we're going to talk about just a couple of guys that we each handpicked as some sleeper players for this season, or for some of our favorite players to watch. What was
also, you were wrong. Is Marco Gonzalez starting today?
Oh, Marco's getting his start today. Oh, that makes sense. Okay, well, that's interesting. So anyways, yeah, some sleeper players for the season, our favorite players to watch. So Jake, why don't you give us your 4 guys?
All right. So I'm kind of weird. I picked 3 guys on terrible teams, and I actually kind of enjoy watching these teams. I like watching the Marlins. Don't know why. It's just kind of fun. Yeah, I'm sure. They're also kind of a fun team to watch, but I like Brian Anderson just because every time I watch, he just gets a hit. And there's nothing I love more than tuning into a baseball game and seeing someone actually hit the freaking ball. Besides watching Cody Bellinger strike out, because I think it's hilarious. But I like watching Brian Anderson. Ketel Marte is fun because he's a former Mariner, and he's one of the better players in the league. I like watching Whit Merrifield just because he goes out and he hits like 300 every year, even though people kind of forget he exists. But he's still fast. He's still good in the field. Depending on it, I don't know where he'll start next year, whether it's outfield or second. But he's just kind of a fun guy to tune in and watch. Maybe a Royals game, watch him get a hit off your favorite player, favorite pitcher. And then I like watching Tim Anderson because this dude's got the biggest biceps of all time. I swear. Especially when they played at the Field of Dreams and he's wearing that t-shirt and he's just like ripping the sleeves. And then he goes out, he hits a walk-off. I mean, I like him. He gets his hits. He hits enough. He hits for average. And then he's got the pop in the bat as well. That's kind of what all of my picks here have. They hit for a solid average. So like you're watching them and they actually hit the ball. And then they have the opportunity to go yard quite a bit.
All right. So we'll get into mine. My first is any Mariner because I like all Mariners and former Mariners too. I like former Mariners unless they go to the Dodgers. And then I got Daniel Vogelbach. Big reason why, former Mariner, but the dude is just an absolute unit and super fun to watch. Next is Seiya Suzuki. I have him as kind of a sleeper player, even though there's a lot of hype around him, and I think he'll be really fun to watch. It's fun to watch those guys come over from Japan because there's not a ton of them. It's usually like one every few years, phenom player from Japan that comes over, and it's interesting to see if they work out. And then my last one is Ke'Bryan Hayes because I like representing third baseman, obviously. So when I watch football, I really like running backs because like when I did play football, me and Jake, that's kind of what we played initially. So I really like those. Third base is what I played before I eventually sucked and got cut from my baseball team. So I like the third baseman. So I like watching them. And Ke'Bryan Hayes is one of my favorites. I also really feel bad for Pirates fans. So good for them. They had this kid, Ke'Bryan Hayes, who they're trying to negotiate a contract with. So it'll be fun to watch those guys. So that pretty much does it for all the content in our episode. The last thing I wanted to mention is the Mariners have 36 players left on their roster. They have 32 40-man roster players and 4 non-roster invitees, which is Devin Sweet, Matt Festa, Billy Hamilton, and Steven Souza. So they could be added to the 40-man if they want to keep them, but they only have one spot available there.
No way Steven Souza makes it.
There's no way Souza makes it, but I don't know if Billy Hamilton will make it. Maybe he will as a base runner and a defensive guy, but we'll have to see.
I'm pretty sure Steven Souza has 2 hits in all of spring training, and I'm pretty sure they're both home runs.
That's actually not true. He has a couple of base hits. But he's been pretty bad. He's been bad defensively.
His average has been like .084.
He's been a little better than that. He hasn't been great. We'll see what happens. They just sent Mike Ford down, so that probably means that they'll send Souza down. Nonetheless, that is basically where it stands, so we will update you on that. 2 more spring training games to go, one today shortly, and then tomorrow against the Reds. They get the day off where they will stay in Arizona to train because it'll be snowy in Minnesota, and then the opener, presumably, hopefully, cross your fingers, it's not postponed, Thursday against the Minnesota Twins. We are getting you ready, and make sure you tune in Wednesday for our Mariners season predictions. Follow us on Instagram, Mariners Deep Dive Podcast, Twitter, and Deep Dive Pod. And it was another successful episode. And as always, thank you for watching, and peace out, Mariners fans.